Our favorite fallouts to do, I'm sure. And probably one of those fallout
No.
therapy sessions, right?
Right, right. I was hoping for the first time City winning back-to-back matches, but we're gonna have to wait for that.
Was not meant to be. Was not meant to be. Started off, it started off wild is what it started off as.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't. Besides the mistakes on those goals, or the way just Colorado created them, I
Mhm.
think City had a good first half, but then the second half I was not pleased with what I saw.
The second half, I was not pleased with what I saw. Let's just, print that and post it all over the place.
Ay, ay, ay.
I really don't like the fact that we keep coming back to, injuries and depth. Like, yes, it is the story, but man, it's so frustrating to just say because I asked Hackworth last night, the subs that he made, like how much it was a very much a rhetorical question, but like I wanted to hear his
Yeah,
thoughts on it on your options in strategic substitutions, timings, bringing in Marcanic and Yarrow when you're down by one in order to try and find some kind
yeah.
of spark. And it's like Marcanic and Yarrow in trying to find something in the attack. Like nothing, no disrespect to those two at all, because it's a concept of you're asking to find goals by subbing in a left back and a center back.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, there wasn't. If you look at the bench,
There was
they have a
nobody.
lot of
No,
options.
that's the
Yeah,
thing. There was nobody.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll get to all of it. You ready to get going?
Let's do it.
A workday fallout, lunchtime fallout. Let's go. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. We're presented by Noble Ice Vineyards, and this week we're here for a fallout to look at a 4-1 loss to the Colorado Rapids for St. Louis City. I'm joined by my friend in soccer, as always, for these fallouts, Santiago Beltran. Santi, how you doing?
Doing all right, Matt. Obviously, it's not great to talk about loss, but we're here. We're here to talk about everything that happened last night. Looked promising for a little bit, but then things changed quickly after the 30th minute. So we're gonna have to talk about that.
I would say this might be the most perfect example so far this year of what the injuries have really done to St. Louis City. It's yeah, the depth is tested or shot or just whatever you want to talk about the adjective to describe our depth, but we were in this game for a large portion of it. You could talk about how effective our offense was, but the starting 11 that we're about to get into wasn't a bad 11, especially all things considered. You can point to a lot of them as backups, so to speak, but especially in an ideal 11. But it really manifested itself in the second half in who we had to replace them for our strategic decision making and how we were going to handle the different things Colorado was throwing at us. But for what we started at, I felt pretty confident, and I think you were talking before we started recording that our first half was fairly good. It was a back and forth, blow to blow, but then it was in the second half that things really fell apart. So let's start at the beginning like we always do. Starting 11, Roman Berkey, Akil Watts, Michael Venzel, Tim Parker, Jaden Reed, Jabulu Blom, Chris Durkin, Jose Kojima, John Klein, Indiana Vaslev, and Nukvi Thorson. It was a 4-2-3-1. A lot of similarities from last game. You had changes, including Michael Venzel and Akil Watts in the lineup. You had the absence of Edu Leuven. So it was kind of a combination at this point of we started resting Thomas Totland on the right side. He had been picking up some, I would say, bruises in training. I hesitate to call them knocks because that has a certain connotation with St. Louis City nowadays. It's more he was picking up some bruises and just needed the overall rest with the minutes that he's been accumulating right from the get-go in MLS. And then Edu Leuven did suffer an injury this week to his adductor, and it caused him to miss this match. I don't know how close he was to making it. John Hackworth said at the end of the game in his post-game comments that Leuven is going to be 50-50 to return to training this week. So it's no guarantee that he's going to come right back, but Leuven was out for this game. You're managing minutes. You only had 7 players on your bench. It was the third match in 9 days. What did you make of this starting 11, not looking at necessarily the depth yet?
The starting I liked, and yeah, obviously not Edu Leuven, so you have to fill a spot there, and the Watts for Tottenham institution made sense based on the minutes that Tottenham had played and what you mentioned, maybe picking up some bruises during practice, their match in 9 days. But I was okay with starting lineup. I was when I look at the bench, only 7 players. I was a little bit concerned, just because on offense, basically you only had Sam Adeniran if you wanted to make a
Mm-hmm.
substitution. So to me that was concerning. But yeah, it's just too many injuries. Playing without the two DPs, Klaus and Leuven, and then your third DP slash max time player goes down also early in the game. So things not going well for City in terms of roster and players available.
Now, and it was the first time since June 8th, to your point about only 2 attacking players on the bench, Sam Adeniran and Caden Glover. It was the first time since June 8th that City did not use a short-term loan for this match. With the injuries that occurred, it's not necessarily the injuries were subsiding as much as the players who we had been loaning up, either their loans are no longer available in cases like Brendan McSorley, or you've just promoted players. Johnny Klein, Michael Wenzel, and Jay Reid all have earned first team contracts in the last month. And so we're elevating players from City 2 to take these spots and fill in these holes that all of our attackers being injured have left. Now, you mentioned Klaus, Leuven, still without Alm and Salio and Nielsen, a host of and Tomas Ostrak, all these players who had played key roles and would have stepped right in to be our best 11 are out. And so promoting from City 2, Backheeled had an interesting comment to this before we get into the game flow that I think it helps frame this. They said there's little to take away from a game in which only 4 actual starters played more than 60 minutes. Other than this, it's going to get worse before it gets better in St. Louis. And I think that's kind of where the fan base is right now. It's trying to find hope in the sense that we're dealing with these longer term injuries that we have no insight into their immediate return. And of those 4 players, I counted Indiana Vasilev, Jaden Reed at this point, I would say is our left back starter, who both played a full 90. Tim Parker and Chris Durkin also played 90 minutes. And then you have Jabulu Blom, who went 77, but I would even argue that for a best 11, Blom is behind Durkin and Leuven. And so just those 4 players, Indy, Jay Reid, Tim Parker, and Chris Durkin having gone 90, everybody else is kind of a fill-in. You can't really make a case that any of them would be part of our best 11. So that's the team that we carried into this, and that's the team that we went up against 4th in the West, one of the better teams, Colorado, away in the altitude, trying to attack them with. And I think it started off more chaotic than anything. This match started off blow for blow, trying to see who could be successful on the counter, just feeling the opponents out, sending the ball long, trying to make something happen, and getting a sense for how teams were going to defend. But it really didn't take long before we had the first big domino fall in Kevin Cabral scoring for Colorado. And this was one of the frustrating moments. There was a few defensively that were really frustrating, and this was one of them, I think, where St. Louis controlled the ball here around the 6-minute mark with Akil Watts carrying it near the penalty area in the right channel, being met by 2 Rapids defenders and dispossessing Watts. And then the Rapids quickly hit on a counter, but they hit on a counter that the St. Louis back line was just so high up and so few in defense. I mentioned Akil Watts as our right back, carrying it into the right channel of the penalty area. And you had Jay Reid back trying to cover, but quick passing opened it up down City's right-hand side. And so you had Michael Wenzel attempting to step up to intercept the ball in our attacking half, and he missed. Colorado had easy numbers down the length of the field with Rafael Navarro feeding Cole Bassett down City's right defensive channel. The crossover to Kevin Cabral in front of Berkey made it easy for him to slot it home, and you just didn't have the numbers early on. And this was something that typically happens for City. If they get beat in the run of play, it's usually on a counter like this where the numbers are not in our favor. It's exposing our center backs who miss on an interception attempt, miss on a tackle, and then they're off to the races.
Yeah, Colorado did a good job in transition. quickly found out that Akil Watts playing so high was going to be beneficial for them, and this early goal was the result of that. You have a coach, Chris Armas, that is familiar with the system City has,
Mhm.
and I'm sure he studied City well, and he knew where he could find spaces. And when we talk about the second goal, it will be interesting to hear what you have to say, because I have some thoughts about that too.
Well, thankfully, the second goal didn't come until St. Louis equalized. Some more back and forth, and I think we started to see Jay Reed get a little more comfortable as the few minutes progressed between the first Colorado goal and the first St. Louis goal. The Johnny Klein goal at 12 minutes was a pretty fantastic answer, and it was emblematic of how City approached this game, running their offense through 22-year-old new signing Jaden Reed. The long ball from Wenzel came and was intercepted, leading to a 50-50 at midfield. And it was actually Jabulu Blom, if you watch the replay, that stepped up and recovered this ball, getting it to Johnny Klein pretty quick in the midfield. And then Klein quickly sent it out to Jay Reed. Reed had a very, very skillful dribble on this one, creating space by himself towards the end line in order to send a cross into the box for Johnny Klein. And the two things that I noted on this play were not just Jay Reed's ball skills, because I had to rewind this and show my wife this play because of just how masterful it was with the ball at his feet, stopping it with his left foot and then quickly moving the ball out with his right, flicking it to create that space. It was more than enough space that he needed. But if that wasn't the most, if that was the most impressive thing, then a quick second for me was the spacing for the cross. And he had this spacing a few different times where he wouldn't try and cross it to near the goalkeeper and create more of a 50-50, trying to get a header right next to the keeper, right next to Zach Steffen. It was deeper in the box to where you have all of these players who are moving up right along the keeper area into the 6-yard area. And then you have Johnny Klein, who's dropped back into space, and he's so free, so open, that's what allowed Johnny Klein, all 5'7" of Johnny Klein, to jump up and have enough space to head this ball into the net. And I just thought that awareness and the vision from Jay Reed was just as impressive as his dribbling skills in order to see what he needed to do to kind of slow things down or pull it back a little bit into where he saw space open up. I don't know if he saw this or if it was an instinct or if that was a design play to pull the Colorado defense so much towards goal. Whatever it was, it worked really, really well.
Yeah, it was a great cross from him, and just the way he created the space, very skillful with with his feet, and he was able to find enough space for the cross. And credit to Johnny Klein also for staying with the play after he passed it to Jaden Reed. He continued the run, and he had an idea of where that cross was gonna go. He was, I believe, yeah, I think he was signaling when he got in the box, and Jaden Reed just found him in the right space. And first goal in MLS for Johnny Klein, and things looked great at that time. Yeah, the early goal at that point, it was a new game. To clear that deficit very quickly, and things were looking good, and even City had to score the next goal and go up, but just didn't happen.
Yeah, and first goal you mentioned in MLS for Johnny Klein, second assist for Jay Reed in his third appearance already. So he's continuing to show some really positive things. At least they both did to start the game. I think one theme through this game is that every single player dropped off in the second half quality wise, but what they started with and what they had at the very beginning offered a lot of promise. And it continued a little bit. I saw nice chances around 22 minutes with another well-placed cross from Jay Reed that hit Jose Kojima with a touch. Nuki Thorson tracked it down and had a shot on target. It was a pretty good shot on target. He was turned away from goal, so he had to turn his body 180 degrees, but that was kind of a nice moment that had a good attempt. I think the XG on that was like 0.15, not insignificant. Then you had Kevin Cabral and Cole Bassett having success in that first 30 minutes of targeting City's right defense in transition. You mentioned earlier that Chris Armas saw something in the City defense, and it's clear that they wanted to expose that. The juxtaposition in the first 30, 35 minutes that ended up leading into the second goal was very similar on both sides. St. Louis was moving the ball through their left, trying to have Jay Reed be one of their big playmakers. Jay Reed ended up with the most touches in the game for St. Louis to this point. St. Louis was going to that well a lot. They liked what they were able to create on that left side. But similarly, you had Kevin Cabral and Cole Bassett, who was filling in at the number 10 for Colorado from the suspended Georgi Mihailovic, they were having a lot of success targeting City's right defense in transition, going after on their left side, the Akil Watts side, who was pressing high up, wasn't getting as far back regularly. And that was clearly a way that they wanted to continue to target, and they would continue to have success there. But before they had success, probably the most devastating thing, goals included, happened at the 32-minute mark, and that's Roman Berkey had to be subbed out of the game. Ben Lundt entered. There was questions about what happened, when it happened, how it happened. And John Hackworth post-game offered a little bit of clarity into Roman Berkey, saying, at the time, I haven't had much of a chance to debrief with the medical staff on it, but I think he just has a back spasm. It happened on the first kick of the game, and he told us on the side, hey, I did something to my back. We had him looked at, and just from what the medical staff told John Hackworth at halftime, he didn't think it's a pulled muscle or anything. He just thinks it was a back spasm that couldn't be relieved in the moment, and so therefore they couldn't move much. He couldn't move much, and had to get him out of there. He tried to go, but he couldn't. And I think we saw that where Shep Messing, I think, commented during the game, one of the Apple announcers, that it looked like Berkey had an injury, and I thought it was during an Omir Fernandez shot on goal around 28. But I think that might have just exacerbated things, where that was clearly a Berkey stretched for something. And if you're going through a back spasm issue and you stretch for a ball to block it, it probably could have been the straw that kind of broke the camel's back, so to speak. So Berkey left at 32. And in what would be the first of two moments where a change occurs, Colorado really, really clamped down, and they took advantage of a St. Louis team trying to get their footing, a St. Louis team trying to get into some kind of a rhythm with new personnel on the field. Just 3 minutes later, Cole Bassett scores to put Colorado up 2-1 on a play where Colorado was kind of playing it out of the back, and they just decimated the St. Louis lines. This ball had eyes in the back of its head, going along long progressive passes, and the entire sequence just put City's defensive shape to shame, I thought. Tim Parker was in the attacking half, nowhere near the back line. I'm not exactly sure what his spacing or intention was, but he wasn't anywhere near Michael Wenzel or Jay Reed or anybody. And so a long outlet then happens and beats Michael Wenzel in transition. Wenzel actually recovers fairly well to meet Kevin Cabral wide to City's left, so he has him out on the wing 1v1. And it was just Durkin and Wenzel back at that time. And Durkin was blocking kind of the middle of the box in front of Ben Lundt. But Colorado ended up getting a third man back in the attack before Akil Watts could track back, and it was Cole Bassett. In between those two, where Durkin and Wenzel had their coverage, and then Bassett ended up putting it in the net. That's my take. I thought Tim Parker was incredibly out of position on that. I'm not sure what the thought process was. Durkin ended up being that other center back tracking back. What did you see?
Yeah. So I watched the replay multiple times last night. But yeah, as you mentioned, Colorado playing out of the back on a goal kick, and to me, it looked like this was something they planned, because yeah, it was a short goal kick with defenders on each side, still inside their box, and short touches, and basically their City's press, and I counted 6 City players around where the ball was, like around Colorado's box, and at that point, Colorado with a long pass just broke the lines. And yeah, Tim Parker, I think he was following what his teammates were doing with that press, and he just couldn't get to that ball. And at that point, Colorado has just had a space and more men to exploit the space that City had left. The other thing I saw, and we will not know, but if Roman Ricky had been on goal, he may have been able to see when Omir Fernandez had that long elevated pass to Kevin Cabral. Maybe he will have anticipated that and gotten that ball and clear it with his head or with his feet. But I think Ben Lundt hesitated, and he didn't go for it. But in the end, Colorado ended up exploiting the space City provided. But to me, it looked like everything like it was planned. Like they knew, okay, if we play short on this goal kick, we're gonna trigger all the press points for City, and City is a lot of players are gonna come to try to press and get the ball, and if we go long, we may be able to find some space, and that's what ended up happening.
I can't remember a team who was so clinical in executing that, where they were drawing City into a design press and then they knew exactly how to beat it. That's it's a scary clinical proposition to think of, that not just City's press was ineffective in stopping some kind of passing, but they were specifically being drawn into press so that they could be exposed. I don't like that you made
Yeah,
me think of that, Santi.
yeah, that's the way I saw it. And actually, when I was calling the game, I was like, wow, goal
Mhm.
kick. And I was like, I had to go back and look at this. And when I look at it multiple times, me, it looked like it was something Colorado prepared.
Yeah.
And again, credit to Chris Armas and his coaching staff. Obviously, they're familiar with the system, so they also know what the weaknesses are and where they can find plays like this to take advantage of the space that the opponent can leave when it presses.
And especially when you have different personnel in some places that they're not as familiar with, or at least working alongside some players that, like Nuke Thorson leading the line. I know he has in the last few games, but that's not his out and out position as the initiator of the press, because that striker role isn't just a striker in the normal sense of the word. It's you're leading the press as well. It's your responsibility to push at the right time. And if Thorson's pushing, which causes that cascade effect of every single other person to push in the right spots to either cut off lanes, to block personnel, or whatever ends up happening, then that could get you in a problem if you're being led into a certain situation. I think no matter what ended up happening, whether it's that on the second goal or the first goal, which was just a more traditional transition deficiency by St. Louis, I thought offensively we had a pretty good first half. Jay Reed, Johnny Klein, obviously good stories. The defense was the big problem, no matter how you look at it. Transition defense was in shambles at times. It was being exposed regularly. I didn't like how we were continuing to have both of our fullbacks high without a solution for helping our center backs. You did have Chris Durkin drop back, which I think the center defensive mid role needs to do in this kind of system regularly. And they do regularly. We do have Chris Durkin or Jabulu Blom drop back into the back line, either covering a fullback or covering in between the center backs. I think that needed to happen more regularly to me, or have Akil Watts drop back more regularly. Something needed to change to fix and shore up the holes in the transition defense. But ultimately, without Roman Berkey, you really just you didn't feel comfortable going into the second half that this was something that if Colorado is going to continue to throw shots on, and they did, that Ben Lund would be able to withstand that barrage and onslaught. At least that's my thought going into the second half. And it really didn't start that much differently in the second half. I thought I saw some quick passing in some small spaces by St. Louis, but Colorado was still looking dangerous in their press to counter. They were still threatening. And St. Louis did have a couple shots at the beginning of the second half, 47 from Durkin, 49 by Vasilev. But then you had, I believe, St. Louis only had 2 shots after the 49-minute mark. One by Sam Adeniran at 64, and then Thomas Totland there in stoppage time. It was the Rapids story outside of that. And that kind of brings to the first sub situation, which is pretty early, I would say, compared to when Bradley Carnell would make some of his subs. Before 60 minutes, Hackworth sent in Sam Adeniran and Thomas Totland for Jose Kojima and Akil Watts, basically like for like subs. But what did you see when Sam Adeniran entered the game? This is a continuing narrative that we have of how cities shape and a lot of their intentionality changes when you have Sam enter the game.
I was excited about seeing Samarian coming in. Actually, during halftime, on on the on what they have on the broadcast, I could see he was like warming up, and I was like, oh, maybe he will come at the 45th minute. But in the end, that didn't happen. But still, early, something that we haven't seen a lot this year, and I was excited. Obviously, him being back with the team, and John Hackworth mentioned on the press conference earlier in the week that that he had a conversation with Adeniran, and it looked like he was ready and he was willing to give everything he had. So I was excited about seeing Adeniran, but I don't know. I don't know if it is that He is still rusty because obviously he wasn't with the team for about 2.5 weeks.
Hmm.
But he had a clear chance. Great pass by Nuke Vitorison, and ended up skying the ball. I don't know if it was a bad bounce or what happened, but it wasn't the big Sam we have seen previously, and there were a couple more others where I didn't think he did he gave his best effort in a couple of runs. So it was a little disappointing at the end to me. Again, I don't know if it is the fact that he hasn't been with the team, maybe a lack of understanding with Torison,
Yeah.
but just wasn't the best showing from him. He had a great pass to Torison though, that in the end he couldn't dominate the ball and get a shot up. But other than that, wasn't the best performance from Sam.
Yeah, those were the two notable ones to me. It was the shot that he had that actually had the highest XG of any shot, 0.32, which is much higher XG than St. Louis usually has on any individual shot. Even the goals that St. Louis had recently in recent games didn't approach a 0.32 XG per individual shot. And that's what Sam had at the 64th minute. And then obviously the 83rd minute, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but the 83rd minute was the other notable time from Sam where you had even had the Apple announcers referencing that Sam was calling his own number on some of these plays, going for goal instead of finding the open man or drawing defenders in and finding the open man. Like he had been doing a good job, and he always does, of drawing defenders in, because I think people know and assume that Sam's going to take it himself when he gets the ball anywhere near the penalty area. He's going to try to make something happen for himself. And so they made a joke. I think he calls his own number around the 70th minute mark. 83, he did the opposite of that. I thought I mean, this really showed that Sam does have the ability to be a distributor just as much as he does to be a finisher. And the ball that he sent in to Nuke Thorson from the wide left wing area to split the back line, to get in behind the back line and provide Thorson with that opportunity, that was a magnificent pass. Like, for all the things that we give Sam, the guff that we give him about being a selfish striker and going for goal when he has open players, a couple times that's happened in the last couple of games. You have to give the credit where credit is due on that kind of a pass. The skill and the talent is clearly there. The decision making isn't quite where it needs to be yet. But before that happened at 83, you had some more subs that St. Louis made after back and forth of that 64th minute Sam shot. You had Bent Lute have a save around that same time. It was one of its only saves of the night. Great extension down on the ground, redirecting a shot wide. That clearly saved a goal. And then 78, St. Louis made their subs, their final subs, fourth and fifth. You had obviously Ben Lunt in the first half. Sam and Totland entered. 78 minute, we send in the attacking duo of Anthony Markanic and Josh Yarrow to take the place of Jabulu Blom and Michael Wenzel. And I asked Hackworth about this sub post game. Extremely rhetorical question. I mean, I can't emphasize just how much I just wanted to hear Hackworth's opinion on this, because it's obvious that you're making subs that need to score you goals. You need to find a way to score goals, and you're putting in Anthony Markanic and Josh Yarrow. And Hackworth just, I mean, basically threw his hands up. What am I supposed to do? Like, we don't have anybody else. I went with something that could change our shape, change our look overall, and try to help find goals from different areas, because it changed to a three in the back look at this point, where you have Josh Yarrow, Tim Parker, and Jaden Reed from right to left. And then you had your wide wing backs of Thomas Totland and Anthony Markanic. And so you created more width while still providing that stability on the back line of the three center backs. What I thought that did, Santi, and I think this goal really magnified it, I thought it removed our presence in the midfield. So by having Jabulu Blom leave, you're leaving Chris Durkin as basically that sole center mid. And the spacing, this was on a throw in. And so the spacing itself is a little more fluid on these kind of throw ins or dead ball plays. But after a St. Louis throw in here, it was, really, this is the fourth goal when this happened, so I'll get to that in a minute. But I thought that the spacing in the center mid was the problem here. And that's where it leads into the 81 goal and the 90-minute goal. The 81-minute goal from Jonathan Lewis, Calvin Harris crossed it up and went in behind the St. Louis line. So Colorado kind of had, I call it a mini possession, where they were leveraging some 50-50s and headers to draw the defense towards them on the City left. So again, Colorado's right side. And they took the space near the goal that City gave them, as Totland was kind of still moving centrally to try to cover that middle space. Remember Chris Durkin being the only center mid still in. Thomas Totland, I felt, was folded into that central area. And so when the cross came up to find Jonathan Lewis, it was back post where Totland should have been. But because he was trying to cover that area more centrally in front of the center backs at the time, because the ball was on the far side, you left that space exposed. And so that's the obvious downside of changing up the formation and moving personnel around, is you're having guys cover some spots in these moments that they're not necessarily familiar with. I thought I don't necessarily say Totland missed his responsibility, because I think he had coverage that he was looking at. I just think the entirety of this formation really didn't gel just 3 minutes into taking the field. And that really goes to my point that I made earlier of, this is the second time after a substitution came on that Colorado really hit us without being able to set and get set and understand whose responsibility was where.
Yeah, probably some miscommunication. If you change shape and you change to three in the back, at least the way I see it, that's no longer Thomas Totland man and his responsibility on that cross. But again, miscommunication on assignments. So yeah, you could say maybe it was Totland's man, maybe it was Josh Jarro's man, but yeah, just too quickly after the substitutions had been made, so the team didn't really was able to set up. The one thing I didn't understand, and I listened to your question to Hackward. If you're gonna go to three in the back, wouldn't you be better off with three in the back with Parker, Ansel, and Josh Jarro instead of improvising with Jaden Reed? We will not know, but yeah, that was notable to me, and I think Colorado, again, they found more space on that side for the two goals, third and fourth goal. Yeah, when you're so short on players, it is difficult to make these decisions and change your shape to find the equalizer. But the other thing I was thinking, like you have, and sorry, I failed to mention this at the beginning. Also, Caden Glover was there, but he wasn't used. And if you really want to give him a look, you have to start giving him minutes. And yeah, you could see this. Oh, it's a situation where team is losing. Maybe in terms of his development is not the best situation to put him in, but at some point you have to start giving the kid minutes, even if he is a striker that you're thinking about having him as one of your future players. He has to start getting some of those minutes. Yeah, maybe not the best decision, but yeah, it's just one short bench, and if Glover wasn't even an option, basically I would say 6 players on the bench, not 7.
Yeah, with Caden Glover, that's an obvious question, and Chris Gebhardt asked it in our live stream chat. You know, what's the point of even bringing Glover to Colorado if you're not going to play him and you're going to put Marcanic and Yarrow in? And the defense in Hackworth to me is, it's not just a one individual player you're looking to bring on Caden Glover to change everything. That's a lot of pressure to put on him, first of all, but also in connection with everything else. Like, what's the play going to be? Is it going to be taking off Johnny Klein? Is going to be taking off Indiana Vasilev, taking off Nukvi Thorson? And what are you going to do with Caden Glover in that role? Because with Sam Adeniran on the field, is Caden Glover going to be an underneath 10? Is he going to be a second striker? Like, what has he shown that he's adept at that works in tandem with what Sam offers? Because you can't, at least to me, it's not necessarily a conversation of you don't want to disrupt his development, though I know that's a factor. It's how well can he fit into the whole of what you're trying to do? And are you introducing chaos and just throwing any fresh attacking body on the field and hope that something good happens? Caden, go play on the left side and try to make something happen. Or are you doing something intentional, like what they did with Marcanic and Yarrow, changing up the formation so that the shape facilitates a little wider play that maybe complements something you're seeing tactically? I don't know. Those are just some thoughts that I had on why Caden Glover might not have been played. But you do really have to start looking at what's it going to take for Caden Glover to find minutes here. He's been on the bench consistently now for a few games. He's provided that extra body almost in an emergency type role where Even I think Brendan McSorley's seen a few more minutes than Caden Glover has. And so now that Caden Glover's here and he's had this many opportunities, he's only had, I think, 29 total minutes between Atlanta and Vancouver. Why not give him that extended look right now? I don't know if it's in place of Knut Thorson, if it's complementing him and you go a 4-2-2-2 type of a look, or maybe you just change it up that drastically and say, Thorson, you've been doing good, but you haven't been finishing any of these shots. You couldn't finish the Sam shot. You had opportunities elsewhere in the game, but you haven't been finishing outside of that one goal in Vancouver. So let's do something different. If not now, when? Because you really don't have anything else to lose at this point with as bad as things are going, and you're not able to have this momentum on the second win, picking up on what you did last week. You still have struggle in finishing and open play. Things aren't connecting well, and you're not having success up top. If you don't give him a look now, you're not going to give him a look after Leagues Cup. You're not going to have Klaus return healthy, Cedric Teukert arrive and be available, and Marcel Hartl come and be available and still play Caden Glover. I'm sorry, but if you're not playing him now, you're not going to play him then. And so what's really the best thing for him? Give him a good look run out, especially in the next few games where Vancouver is not this surging, fantastic team. You've got Sporting KC on the horizon, who is abysmal this year. So Seattle is not the greatest team. They're not the Seattle of old. So you have opportunities to throw him in these not as high leverage situations where nothing else has worked. Go show us what you got. And maybe he takes it and runs with it. The upside is there compared to what he's been doing anyway.
I like that thought. Give him a run. I like what I have seen from Torison with these extended minutes he has gotten, but the finishing is still not there. So yeah, give Caden Glover a chance. Even if it's not the starting 11, give him at least 30 minutes at the end of a game, or second half sub at the beginning for Torison if Torison is still not able to finish the chances. But yeah, I agree with you. The chance to do it, to see if he's ready, is now. Is still try to plan. Yeah, I agree with you. Yesterday maybe wasn't the best situation to use him, but plan for it and see where he could serve you well, and give him a good look with significant minutes. Last 10 minutes of a game, not really a good sample.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully we'll see more from Caden Glover in the next 3-4 games before all the reformers arrive to St. Louis and some of the injured players back.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of Thorson. We've seen a lot of Sam, and what they both offer. We haven't really had that opportunity with Caden Glover. If not now, when in 2024? Colorado did have a fourth goal. This was the one I was alluding to earlier about the throw-in that to me exposed our central mid area. Similarly, we had gone to a back five, and you had Jonathan Lewis running into space a bit, and Yappy, their 19-year-old, I think, homegrown player, Darren Yappy, scored the goal, celebrated like crazy. Let's move on. 4-1 Colorado. The takeaways are easy. Defensive lapses in transition. Colorado just showed us how to run the style that we want to run right now. And that's really unfortunate, is that they beat us at a style that we pride ourselves in right now. That high intensity, counterattacking, able to possess the ball a little bit when necessary, good on set pieces, good on throw-ins, and just have high caliber players right now. Rafael Navarro, Cole Bassett. Bassett just missed out on an Olympic call-up. Georgi Mihailovic, the last game, 3 goals, just got called up to the Olympics. This is a team that has built high quality across the board players, and they're not dealing with the level of injuries we have. That's always in the back of our minds here, are the level of injuries that we've sustained. John Hackworth's comments after the game said there were some reasons to think you could take some good vibes from this. It's possible, because his point was that they were in that game for 80 plus minutes. And he said, when did they score that third goal? It was in the 81st minute. And again, Hackworth said he can't overstate the fact that if you can put yourself in a position to, get one goal back and walk out of there with a point, that's massive. It's still away in MLS. I know we don't like draws, but they are much more helpful than a loss. Hackworth said we were clearly going for it. We're not going to try to bunker in and just survive the game 2-1 and walk out of here with a close loss. He said, no, we went for the win. And that opened ourselves up a little bit. This is where that sub happened for the 3 at the back. It opened themselves up a little bit. And, it definitely looks and feels a lot worse, 4-1 versus 2-1. but he said they're going to try to build on those positives. It's the only thing that they can do. We have to be, like I said earlier, a team that starts to look for solutions to the problems that we have, because it's the only way to get out of the hole that we're in. Hackworth's comments post game. So the takeaways are pretty clear. You look to those positives of what you were developing, how you were staying in the game early as opposed to what ended up happening at the end. But through those first 80 minutes or so, was there anybody that really stood out, Santi, in somebody's performance that you were overly positive with? Was it just John Klein, and was it just Jay Reed? We mentioned John Klein had his first MLS goal. Jay Reed had his second assist and led the team in. Jay Reed actually led the team in a handful of categories: 60 touches, 5 shot creating actions. He led the team in successful take-ons, meaning you dribble past players, with 6. Jose Kojima was the only other player with any successful take-ons, with 2. Maybe Jabulu Blom, he led all players with 3 interceptions. Chris Durkin led the team with 3 tackles. So defensively, there were bright spots. Do you feel like those were performances that we can build on?
Yeah, definitely Jaden Reed, a great performance on his third MLS start, just fresh of signing a new contract. He continues performing, and I think for now that left back position is his. And the other play that I think was a bright spot was Chris Dorkin, just because he's everywhere, and he continues performing in the midfield as defensive midfielder. But yeah, the first half I think it was positive, aside from the mistakes that led to Colorado's goals. I think it was positive. Again, similar to last game, City was not afraid to possess the ball, had higher possession than Colorado in that half, and I think they were doing a good job with the ball, which was something positive in the game against San Jose. Just second half, the team wasn't the same, but yeah, you can build on that first half, and even the fact that, as Hakwar mentioned, that even though the set wasn't the best, the team was still in the game up to the 80th minute. Just at that point, made some substitutions that ended up working. The lack of depth dictated those substitutions. So yeah, you can build from that. And yeah, as you mentioned, that getting a point will have been massive, but now the team it's in a position where it has to get more than 60% of the points left. And we have talked about this multiple times, but just 12 games left, 5 at home. At some point, you have to start getting 3 points away. And yesterday was a good chance to get confidence, back-to-back wins, then back to City Park maybe for a third. But yeah, just the lack of points. It's is dictating this season for City, and obviously with some of the points the team lost at home in the last few weeks, it's just getting very, very difficult. And you're going sooner rather than later, you may get in a situation where you are still in it mathematically, but you need 80% of the points. At that point, I think the season is over. And basically, these next 3 games before the transfer deadline are going to be key. The team will need to get some points to stay within reach of that 9th place, and then see what you can do with your new signings after the league's break.
Yeah, the math starts to hurt when you're trying to add up how we can find the points necessary to still make the playoffs. Definitely not out of it's far from mathematically eliminated. Far from that. That's not a conversation yet. But you have to start looking at who you're going to be taking these points from. And I think the biggest point that you made is that we have to start figuring out how to win on the road. We are only one of 2 teams in the entire league right now, along with FC Dallas, to have not won a game on the road yet. You can't make the playoffs unless you can't find a way to win some games on the road. I'm not asking for all the games. I'm not even asking for 50% of the games on the road, but you have to figure out how to win some games on the road. Those are the points that you clear and shore up so that you can do what you need to do at home and really pull yourself back into contention. The next few games, huge, like you said. Second game against Vancouver coming up next weekend. We have Seattle and SKC on the other side of that. None of those teams are having great years. Seattle's in 7th. Vancouver's been falling rapidly. They're in 6th place, and SKC is in 13th place. So none of these teams are in phenomenal form. Seattle is probably the best informed team of that bunch. Vancouver, we just played them. We know we can go up early on them. We just need to figure out how to hold a lead now coming into City Park. But the depth is really going to continue to be tested. I mentioned earlier, Edu Leuven is probably 50-50 to return to training this week. We'll have more information on him in our midweek pod and on our show later this week, previewing Vancouver. Roman Berkey, we hope that he bounces back quickly. It would not surprise me to see him held out of training earlier in the week. We just hope for better progression, that he's able to bounce back quickly. He's a huge difference maker. We know that the team looks different with and without Edu Leuven as well. So those two players might be the biggest injury issues that we've had, especially concurrently, even given everything else together. Saleo, Ostrak, Klaus, Nilsson, Berkey, and Leuven might hurt the most. But holding with Colorado for 80 plus minutes, like Hack said, that's something to build on. Still looking for that first away win. St. Louis is still in 12th place in the West, now a 4-8-10 record. Fall back to 22 points in 22 games, that 1 point per game mark. Now 8 points back from 9th place Austin FC. So we still have ground to make up, but it's not out of the realm of possibility if we have a good stretch coming up. The key to this coming week is going to be to find that hunger and kind of anger to get the job done. I feel like the complacency that was described with the departure of Bradley Carnell, we still haven't seen that fire. And maybe it's been the fire has to accompany new players from City 2 getting used to certain spots. I don't think anybody would say Michael Wenzel had a great game against Colorado, but you build on the positives that you can, and you try to make players a little angrier and want it a little bit more. And there's no better place to do that than City Park. It hasn't been the greatest season at City Park either, but all of our wins have come at City Park. We hope that one more does against Vancouver. Anything else on this show before we call it, Santi?
No, I think that's it for me. Big game coming up against Vancouver. We will preview that on Thursday. But yeah, team has to win the 5 games at home. And somebody, yeah, it was Mo asking how many games the team will need to win away to make playoffs.
No specific number on that, but I'm just saying you can't make the playoffs by winning 0 games on the road.
Yeah.
Mathematically, that doesn't work.
But I will say if you win all at home, depending on the other results, at least 2 wins away, maybe 3 if you don't get some of those draws that people don't like, but could be useful. But yeah, definitely at least 2 games away, possibly 3, depending on the other results.
Yeah, the September schedule is somewhat favorable. The Revs, Minnesota United, Earthquake, SKC. I mean, there are some favorable matchups left in the season. There's some pitfalls like LA Galaxy, LAFC, but overall, I think the potential is there still. The season's far from lost. We just need to get to that point where Twykert's available, Hartel's come in. And you said, just for anybody who wasn't watching on social media, Marcel Hartel is supposed to be here by either the end of this week or early next to start training, hoping to see him in training by the beginning of the week of the 15th, I would say. That's is that still, you think, holding up?
I think so. Yeah, we had Diego Gigliani at the Spanish broadcast booth on Wednesday, and yeah, he said they expect him within a week and a half. So yeah, that will put him like about a week from now, maybe late next week. But regardless, I don't think he will be available for that game against the Sporting KC after the transfer window starts. But at least I would think Cedric Teuchart will be. Maybe he will give a spark to the team, because that game against Sporting KC, for you, Matt, and for everybody, to me, that like right now for both teams, it looks like a playoff game. Whoever comes on the losing end on that game, I don't think is gonna make the playoffs.
That's fair. That's fair. I think the reason that we talk about those two players more than Jake Girdwood Reich is because they have more quick areas to move in and impact the play. We're not looking for Girdwood Reich to come in and help us figure out how to score goals. defensively, we could be doing what we're doing now with Parker, Nilsson, with the healthy players. It's offensively that's my big problem. I don't like allowing 4 goals, but Hackworth helped to explain that in the sense that they were a lot more ambitious and they were willing to go for it to create something to score a goal. A 4-1 loss is still the same in the scorebooks as a 2-1 loss. It's 0 points at the end of the day. And so you try to find that other goal. It's those reinforcements to scoring goals is the reason why we harp on Cedric Teuchert and Marcel Hartl. Those 2 attacking players are going to make a difference, regardless of when other players like Klaus, Alm, and Leuven return. It's going to be those 2 players coming in as healthy, as quick as possible with their health. It's going to make a difference. Teuchert's already training with the team, so we want him to get in as quick as possible to that SKC game. That's why we harp on those 2 players in particular. And yes, I do think that they're going to make as big of a difference as we're hyping them up to.
I hope so. Just hope it's not too late. But yeah, big week coming up. Now every game it's a final. I think we have been saying that for a few weeks too. But
Yeah,
but now it's coming to that. Like especially at home, you have to get 3 points every game.
could be a long week as a City fan trying to take it all in, look for the positives, but hopefully that first 80, 81 minutes gave us enough positives over a really good Rapids team to carry us through the week. And we know we're capable of getting out in front of Vancouver. We know we're capable of scoring goals against them. So lessons learned in the past few weeks of allowing goals, transition defense have to be taken to heart as we now have a full week of rest and recovery ahead of us. It's the last full week for a little bit. We have a midweek game next week against, I believe, Seattle and then SKC after that. So this is our chance. Get healthy, get right, prep for Vancouver, and we'll be here to preview it all. We'll have a midweek pod this week. We'll have our preview of Vancouver, our usual time. And that's it for us. Hope you've enjoyed this episode looking back at, well, another City match, regardless of the 4-1 loss. My name is Matt Baker. For Santiago Beltran, we're Flyover Footy. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you later.
Vamos City.
And thanks for everybody joining in the live stream. Appreciate the comments. I wasn't as active as I usually am on our Thursday stream in responding to them, but thank you so much for commenting. It was good to read them and adding to all of our conversation. Guys like Aaron, Derek, Mo, Chris, as always. Thank you all so much for joining in. We really appreciate it.